I'm filming on a rocking chair and it's really hard not just to talk to camera like this. That's gonna freak out the autofocus. Hi, and welcome to my channel. If you haven't visited before, my name's Ruth and I've got a little boy called Jet who is 20 months and I am 33 weeks pregnant with number 2. Boy or girl, not sure. I asked if there was any particular videos people would like to see. A couple of people said stuff about sleep training, and then actually since then, just coincidentally, I've had a few messages asking about, I mentioned in a different video in my mum 5 top tips, I mentioned something about an approach to kind of baby training called easy, and a couple of people have asked about that. And then also I was talking recently to a friend who's trying to start a new vibe with her baby's sleep. And so sleep's just been on the mind. And so I thought I'd do a video all about Jet's sleep and how we got here and what we did. And yeah, our kind of training and stuff. Totally coincidentally, I decided to film in Jet's bedroom to talk about Jet's sleep training. But it was completely unintentional because I've got a builder here who's painting and I'm extremely self-conscious. Our living room doesn't have a door, so I can't really film in our living room, which is where I'd normally film, so I thought I'd come in here. And now I am in Jet's room by his cot to talk about his sleep training. So anyway, I'll just do a quick catch up. I'd say we actually started kind of thinking about it when he was 8 months. I think we were probably a bit late to the game. But anyway, I'll just quickly catch you up from when he was born. So from when he was newborn, we bought a sleepy head. I'm gonna do a video about my baby must-haves, but spoiler alert, sleepy head is in there because I am bloody obsessed with those things. But yes, he had a sleepy head and he was in that from day one. The day we brought him back from hospital, he was in a sleepy head. We put him in his sleepy head on one sofa and we'd be on the other sofa, and that would be our evening for the first few months. And then when we went to bed, we'd pick him up, transfer the sleepy head into he had a little swinging cot. It was Henry's from when he was a baby. So he had this 30-year-old swinging cot that we had by my side of the bed for me to when I was feeding him in the night. That's actually something that we wouldn't use again. But again, I'll talk about that in another video about the baby essentials. But he slept by me in the night, but he'd go down in his sleepy head. And when he was newborn, he would go to sleep on us, I think, and then we'd transfer him into the sleepy head, and I'd often have a hot water bottle there first, get it to a nice temperature. He always slept on his side in the sleepy head, really nice and cozy and cocooned. We never swaddled him, but it felt like with the sleepy head, you kind of get that feel where they're nice and kind of bundled in, but without being swaddled. So the easy thing that I was talking about before is eat, awake, sleep yourself. And we did this from newborn, and it's basically the idea that it's a 3-hourly routine. And so at the start of the 3 hours, you feed them. Then you try and encourage them to have some awake time so that they don't associate eating with falling asleep. Then they nap and you have time to yourself. So it's eat, awake, sleep, yourself. We roughly had those times down as 7, 10, 1, 4, 7, 10, 1, 4. So it gets you into a really nice routine that you try and treat 7 like the morning and 7 p.m. like bedtime, even right from the beginning, just so you've got that mentality. And we didn't stick to it totally, but it was just nice to have that in the back of your head. I can't stop moving because I'm on this blooming rocking chair. From about 3 or 4 months, we started putting him down straight away in his sleepy head, in his swinging cot, rather than in the living room with us, just so that it was dark and nice and quiet and it felt more like nighttime. Because someone else suggested that it's really good right from a young age to really differentiate between the vibe you create for a nap and then for the actual nighttime sleep. So for his naps when he was little, he'd be in the living room and there'd be noise around him and I'd have the radio on or whatever. And then for nighttime, we then wanted to instill from about 3 months. It was like a quiet room and it's very much like nighttime. It's not time to be playing. And then in the day, the nap is a bit different, which actually has worked really well because now he doesn't need blackout blinds to be able to go to sleep. Because for his nap, I always was really intentional with putting him down kind of anywhere and everywhere. So now he doesn't rely on it being dark to fall asleep, which is just a side note, but that's been really helpful. But yeah, so from 3 or 4 months, we started putting him down in his little crib at about 7. Jump forward to 7 months, and we realised, I don't know, you just get into these funny patterns, don't you? But we just suddenly clocked at 7 months that we'd been rocking him to sleep every night. So every night we'd do his bath and story, put him in his pyjamas, and then one of us would literally just stand by his crib and just rock him until he fell asleep, and we'd probably do that for like 15-20 minutes, and then it was that game of getting him into his crib. So, you know, you have to like slowly lift him down and then like take one arm away, leave one hand there, take the other hand away, and then like tiptoe away, and then he'd be like, rah, and he'd start all over again. But we just didn't really clock, like, okay, actually this child is 7 months old, he's been in the world quite a while now, he probably doesn't need to be rocked to sleep every night. And I think initially when he was a newborn, my mentality was he had been living inside me for 9 months, and I didn't want to just be really harsh and like, right, you're in the world now, you're on your own. So at first I didn't mind that he would fall asleep on us and that we'd rock him, or he'd maybe have his nap in his ergo, in his like baby sling or whatever. I didn't mind that he wanted to be close, because I kind of wanted to transition him into the real world. I think we carried on with that a bit longer than I now would with the next one. Oh, I need to sneeze. 7 months, and we realised, okay, enough is enough. We're losing some of our evening just rocking this child to sleep, and he doesn't really need to. I'd also heard before this kind of frame of mind, I never know what the expressions are for these kind of things, but I'd heard this kind of mentality. It basically takes 3 days to instill any new routine into a baby, or child probably. Whatever habit you find yourself in, you can in 3 days break it. And so we're like, okay, this is the perfect time to test that theory. We decided to do 2 at once, and we decided to stop rocking him to sleep. We basically wanted him to self-soothe and move out of our bedroom and into his own room, into here, into this very cot, which was maybe a bit ambitious of us. I think I'd also got to the point where he didn't really need to be feeding in the night. He was only feeding really for comfort, or he needed maybe 1 feed in the night. Oh no, that was it. Also, we'd moved his nighttime feed to a bottle to try, and I was slowly coming off breastfeeding. I'd been exclusively breastfeeding, and then he was slowly going onto a bottle, so he was having his bottle in the night so that Henry could also do it. So he didn't need to be next to me, and we'd got to the age where we were both annoying each other, and he'd wake me up and I'd wake him up. And also he'd grown out of the stage of wanting to sleep on me. He wanted to be in his crib anyway, so he didn't need to be next to me. Also, side note, sorry, I'm really bad at these videos because thoughts come in like the whole time, but side note, don't be worried about getting yourself into a habit that you can't break. I think just be kind to yourself and to your baby and let them kind of ease into life. Don't feel like you have to be in this routine straight away. I mean, if that's your thing, great, but if it's not your thing, don't feel like you're kind of creating a rod for your back. So for example, when Jet was newborn, I would let him sleep on me quite a lot. In the night, it just seemed to be the only thing that would comfort him. I'd have myself kind of propped up and then he'd sleep on me. It wasn't the funnest thing for me because I didn't really get very good sleep, but it helped him settle. And actually he just kind of grew out of that. We didn't kind of start this habit that we could never break. He actually just started to get quite fidgety, and I think he'd probably get a bit warm on me. He kind of got to the age where he was like, actually I don't really like this anymore, and then from then on he never slept on me. Yeah, that's just an example of where I think sometimes you just need to go with the moment, go with the season of what they need at that point, and don't feel like that means you're gonna, you know, if you're not wanting to co-sleep, don't feel like a few weeks of doing one thing is setting you up that you're definitely going to go like a certain way. It doesn't have to be like that at all. Anyway, so we decided to put him in his own room and for him to self-settle, and we had this 3-day approach. So first day, we did the normal bedtime routine, and then we just put him straight in the cot and then left the room, and I like closed the door and just started crying, and I just felt like I'd sent him out into the big wide world to fend for himself. So I just stood outside his room and cried while he was in his room crying. Henry's a lot stronger than me, so he was like trying to encourage me to leave it for like a minute, but I could barely even leave it a minute. I went back in and just stroked his back, comforted him, gave him back his dummy if he lost it, and then left the room again and closed the door, and just kept doing that, but kept extending the time, the kind of break in between. I just kept trying to extend that. So I'd then wait 2 minutes before I went back in, then wait 5 minutes before going back in, and I'd say it was about an hour, maybe an hour and a half of him crying on and off, and me going back in and kind of doing less and less each time as well. So the first time I spoke or maybe sung to him, rubbed his back, gave him his dummy, reassured him, and then it slowly got to the point where I then was just silent and just stroked his back, and then was just silent and kind of gave him his dummy, and then kept doing that. So within about an hour and a half he was asleep. And then the same in the night, he'd wake up really sad, and it was so tempting in those moments just to bring him back into our room. But I think because we knew we had that 3-day rule in our head, that really helped, because I was like, in the moment, this feels like forever. I know it's this idea that it'd take 3 days, and so let's at least give it those 3 days, which really helped. I think in those moments where you could just give in, we didn't. Just go back in, re-find his dummy, or just stroke his back a little bit, or if it was in the middle of the night, then maybe it was just that he needed his milk, so do his milk and then leave him again. And his milk basically always sent him back to sleep. So we were still doing the 10 o'clock feed, and then I think we were still doing like a 4 a.m. feed. So both of those we'd still do. And then the second night, same thing, but just a little bit better. So I think for a bit less time, maybe for like 45 minutes. And then the next night, I put him down. He cried for a little bit. By this point as well, obviously third night, I knew he wasn't gonna die. I knew he was okay. I knew he was safe in his cot. I knew he had his dummies and his toys. And so I left him that little bit longer, because he also wasn't crying. You kind of know your baby's cries, don't you? Because the first night I felt like he was getting really het up and like he was going to start getting really sweaty and just too worked up, and I didn't think it was very good for him. Whereas by the third night he was crying just quite like indignantly and a bit angry with us, but I could tell that he was safe. So I left him more like kind of 5-7 minutes, and he'd kind of cry and then stop and then start crying again and then stop, and then eventually just stopped and went to sleep, and I didn't go in at all. And honestly, from then onwards, we haven't looked back. And then also, so in those 3 days, we did the same with naps. So he was having naps on me in the sling, or in the sleepy head in the living room. Actually, no, we'd got to the point as well where we were constantly having to put him in the buggy and like rock the buggy in the hallway to sleep. And so we did the exact same thing with naps over those 3 days as well, where I think at that point he was having like a 9 a.m. nap and then like a 1 p.m. nap or something. And both times we did the same thing. If I was in, if I was out, then he was just in the buggy, and that was fine, because I wanted him to be able to nap both. But so the 9 a.m. one, I remember really clearly, I put him down, and exact same thing. He was really angry, really sad, and I just kept going back in, leaving it longer and longer in between going back in. I think the first day he didn't nap in the end till like 10 a.m. But it was fine, he survived. And it feels like, you feel like such an achievement when they do drop off, that you've actually managed it. And then each day it got better, to then by the third time I put him down for his nap and he was awake, but just kind of happily played with his dummies and then slowly drifted off. And it was like breakthrough. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like sleep. Well, no, I guess it is kind of sleep training, but it didn't feel really mean and harsh. I feel like sometimes with sleep training, I'm really worried that it's quite regimented and strict, but I think we made it work for us. We did it how we felt comfortable. And I just couldn't believe the results. So yeah, 3 days and then he was sorted. I keep getting very distracted by this lighting. It's getting really dark outside already. It's like 2:30 and it's basically dark. Yeah, so like I said, with the easy theory, it's eat, awake, sleep yourself. So you're basically just trying to get them out of the habit that feeding is something that sends them to sleep. And then I'd say, I mean, obviously it depends if you're breastfeeding or not. This is my advice, but I feel like talking about breastfeeding is like incredibly controversial, and everyone's opinion is valid and everyone is allowed to do what they want to do. But for me, just personally, I'm so aware of like getting hate. I breastfed until Jet was 9 months old, but from about 7 months, I think 7 or 8 months, I decided that I didn't want to breastfeed at night, because I felt like the breastfeeding thing is such a comfort for them, and I didn't like the idea that the night times were starting to become that he was just waking because he wanted to be fed, not because he needed to be fed. So that's when we personally changed to bottles in the night, so that it was hopefully maybe a bit less appealing to him. We could kind of control the quantities we were giving him and just slowly trying to wean him off nighttime feeds basically. And for me, the best step towards that was stopping breastfeeding in the night. Obviously that's completely a personal thing, but for me that helped. And then so then at 9 months, I didn't actually mean to stop breastfeeding. Basically at 9 months I then pulled it back again in the day. I just wanted that bit more freedom than to be tied to coming back to feed him, and I didn't get on that well with expressing. And so I cut down one feed, and then my supply just kind of disappeared. My body just thought I was stopping and then just stopped for itself. So it I kind of just stopped out of, I didn't really have a choice. But anyway, side note, another trick I found, if your baby has dummies in the night, I was always going in and just popping the dummy straight back in his mouth for him to fall back asleep. And then a friend told me about a good trick to try and teach them to be able to look for the dummy themselves. So if they wake up and they can't find it, rather than just putting it in their mouth, you put it like near their hand so that then they find it and put it in, and then it just helps them to kind of start clocking that their dummy is within reach, and to kind of get them to try a bit harder to find it. We also would just scatter his, or we still do, just scatter his cot like potpourri with dummies just everywhere, so that he's more likely to be able to find one, so that he just finds it himself in the night and we don't have to be getting up and running through to help him. But yeah, I hope that's helpful for people that have asked questions about sleeping. If you do want to change anything, go with the kind of 3-day mentality and stick it out if you can. If your baby's waking for a feed every hour, the reality is they don't need it. And I guess also it's quite helpful if you're breastfeeding to be timing how long they're feeding for, and if they're having a bottle feed, obviously look at how much they're taking, and just double check that within each feed they're actually taking in enough, so that then they're not wanting it again an hour later. But I think the problem is, it's in the moment, it's 2 a.m, we've all been there, you just want to do whatever you can to get them to go to sleep. My biggest piece of advice would be just to be really strong in that moment, and I think the 3-day thing helps you be strong, because you know that you kind of set yourself up that you're going to have 3 horrible nights and 3 horrible days, but you kind of know that it's coming, so you kind of psych yourself up for it, so that in that moment at 3 a.m. when they're crying and you know you shouldn't be giving them milk but you're tempted to, you kind of stand your ground and you don't, and you maybe give them a bit of water and their dummy and let them cry, and then go back in and comfort them, then go back out, then go back in and comfort them, go back out. But you will get there, and it's so much better than just kind of forever having a baby that needs feeding loads in the night, or, you know, rocking to sleep or whatever. Also, just nothing lasts forever, no season lasts forever. Even if you don't do this and you just go with the flow, the season will naturally come to an end at some point. It just maybe it will take a bit longer. But I would just say, don't get bogged down when you feel like you're in a season of bad sleep or a lot of feeding or whatever. It will pass, and they will soon be 3 and not need you. Hope that's helped in some way. Please do, if you've got any more questions, comment below. I did a video recently all about my hypnobirthing experience, and then people asked more questions, so then I did a quick little blog post as well to kind of follow up with stuff that I'd missed. I mean, obviously I'm no expert, this is just purely my experience, this is what we've done, but it has worked for us. If you have any more questions, then just jot them down below, and then I can maybe do like a little follow-up blog or something. Anyway, I've talked for ages, I can see on the camera. And I've also just spotted a stupid camera bag I left in the background. That's annoying. But yeah, thanks for watching, lots of love.